Good afternoon. This is Bruce Blythe with Farm Futures. I'm at Ag Market Net's annual Farming for Profit, Not for Price conference in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm here with Matt Bennett. He's CEO of Ag Market Net. He is also a farmer in Central Illinois, and he just gave a really good speech covering everything about the markets and grains that you need to know. So, Matt, thank you for your time today. I just wanted to ask a few questions, kind of wondering what you're hearing from producers at this year's event. What the kind of feedback and takeaways are you?
Yeah, I mean, clearly it's been a very challenging time these last 2 to 3 years. I know that one of the things that producers have shared with me is they were really happy that we wove in a little bit more for cattle this year, that we were able to weave in a little bit more for succession planning, which is something I even touched on a little bit just because of our personal experience. You know, it's a tough process. I don't think that anybody loves it, but cementing legacies is a pretty big deal, of course, to a lot of people. And then the last one I would say that was different than what we've done in the past, was having Josh Linville here to talk about fertilizer. Guys were thanking us for giving them some direction there. It's not the rosiest of conversations, but at the same time, it's something we need to be thinking about.
Yep. So we're coming off on what in a lot of ways was a banner year for farmers. Record corn crop, 17 billion bushels. Yet the supply situation looks pretty bearish, and we've seen estimates for corn plantings this year, 96 million acres, which would be down from last year's historic high, but it still could lead to a pretty hefty carryout in 2027, maybe something in excess of 2 billion bushels. So what's your take on the kind of numbers, the acreage mix and supply outlook for?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start with, a lot of folks felt like it was a banner year indeed, but it was a banner year for yields. But unfortunate reality for a lot of growers is that I talked to a lot of growers in the last several months that said I had my best all-time record crop and lost money. And so this was a tough year. I mean, it's a tough year for a variety of things. Input costs, clearly, as far as the corn market was concerned, we didn't have a lot of opportunities to sell at a high level. And so whenever you look at, if you end up with a 95 or 6, and right now, my head's probably on the high end of the range. Now, if we look at 98.8, I did point this out to the group. Whenever you have an outlier of a higher acreage number, typically you pull back 3 to 4 million acres. Is that going to happen this year? I think that's the big question. There's no question in my mind that if it was below 95, it'd actually be somewhat a friendly number. And the reason for that is because you've got all-time record world and U.S. demand. And so if U.S. demand is as strong as USDA has suggested, if you pull 4 or 5 million acres out of the mix, it's going to have a pretty big impact on how important it is that we have ideal weather this coming year. So, could we see 2.2 this year and then another 2 plus next year? Absolutely. But at the same time, inflation adjusted corn's pretty cheap. And right now, we're the cheapest corn in the world, and we continue to export the daylights out of it. So demand's not going away. What we're going to do is back ourselves into a corner where we have to produce. I mean, that's what excessive demand calls for, is that you have to produce every year. And at some point, Mother Nature is going to get her nose out of joint. And when that happens, I do think that you'll see a significant amount of volatility enter the market.
Did you get any sense of the acreage mix from talking to producers this weekend? Were you looking at something similar rotationally? Or
yeah, I mean, one thing I pointed out is that really every state in the U.S. that plants very many beans last year was actually lower in acreage last year. And so everyone pretty much had pulled back from planting soybeans this past year. Is actually, the slide is pretty dynamic because it's all red. Corn to beans, beans to corn, guys, you're probably going to get, I hate using terms like this, but kind of an organic change back over to corn or to soybeans from corn, because corn was so high last year. Now, I do think crop insurance is going to play a role whenever it comes to acreage. Crop insurance, you're going to be able to insure more revenue for less money invested this year, and I think that will play a role, especially in farther west. So I've been all over the country the last few weeks, speaking in a lot of different venues. It depends on where I'm at, on what growers say. Now, obviously, we had people from lots of states here, but going out to meetings, I feel like I can get a better handle on it, because each individual crowd, you can really tell where they're at. Farther west, I feel like there's a lot of corn. You get into Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, I do think there's going to be a lot of areas that the normal rotation will just take you back to a few more bean acres than what we had a year ago. So, right now we're currently probably in that 96 and 83 range.
Okay. And what's the prudent approach to marketing and pricing grain in a year like this, the way things are setting up, the fundamental outlook? Is anything different about this year compared to previous years in your experience?
Yeah, I mean, there's some similarities for sure, but one thing that you continue to do with cheap corn prices, again, inflation adjusts. A lot of people say, well, $4.50 is a really good price for corn. $4.50, whenever your input costs allowed you to put a crop in the ground for $800, $4.50 was a pretty good price for corn. A lot of folks are putting a corn crop in the ground this year from $950 to $10,050 an acre. So, with that being the case, I would have to think that if I look, for instance, at input costs to me are one of the biggest structural issues that we have, okay? And so I have to understand, I've got to keep my cost structure under control. Now, whenever it comes to the marketing plan, we're still 8-9 months away from harvest. Do I want to lock in a loss? Probably not. I want to kind of wait and see how this thing plays out, because with massive demand, at some point, if you do get into a weather issue, let's say Safrina has a crop problem, we have to keep in mind, last year world stocks, for this year, world stocks are going to actually constrict by 4 million metric tons, which is interesting because the U.S. had the largest corn crop we've ever had by a landslide. And so that means that corn worldwide, we're using more than what we're growing. Mm-hmm. And so we just need some sort of a weather issue somewhere. And I know everyone hopes that's not for us, but if that's the case, we should get volatility into this market and at least get an opportunity, to maybe market or manage some risk above break even. That's my hope right now. The verdict is still out. This is a tenuous situation, but I don't feel this far away from harvest that we need to get aggressive if we can't make money.
Well, Matt, thank you very much for your time today. It's been very informative, and appreciate all your insights, and thank you for this conference.
No, absolutely. Thanks for being here.
Once again, Bruce Blythe with Matt Bennett. I'm with Farm Futures, and you can read more on farmfutures.com.